The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 33. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 33, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the second engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Dakota, Representative Hewitt, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a third time for us here in the House to talk about this bill and to hopefully pass it tonight. Our Majority Leader Long has been working hard on this since we've both been freshmen, and hopefully tonight we'll find resolution to getting this passed. The reason we have this bill before us, and the reason that I guess I'm carrying it, is most of you know that I spent a lot of time in rural Minnesota this year, looking at the ambulance services and how we can perform better public safety throughout the state. One of the common themes when I was out talking to many of your county administrators and county commissioners was, John, I can't even put a plow on the snowplow. We just don't have the tax base to continue to think about an ambulance. If they can't think about an ambulance, they definitely can't be hiring more prosecutors. And this is so important to us because, as we heard last week from many of my friends across the aisle, Representative Navanti, that really has a passion and is really authentic, is worried about the victims. This bill is all about the victims. Representative Hudson and Representative Grossell, who talked in public safety about our gun laws and said that if we can just prosecute the bad players, we wouldn't have these problems. This is all about that. Members, I don't expect all of you, I think this will be a robust debate today, but really, we should have a total green board like we did last time. So I look forward to the debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker.
Always want to be a madam when I grew up. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Niska moves to amend Senate File number 33, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A1.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure I can follow that, but I'll try. Well, members, as the wise Uncle Ben told Peter Parker, with great power comes great responsibility. The Christian scriptures also say, to whom much is given, much is expected. In the same way, the A1 amendment is us, as the legislature, telling the Attorney General, with millions of dollars of special appropriations outside of the normal appropriation process, comes just a little accountability and oversight. So the A1 amendment is a modest accountability measure to ensure that this special additional appropriation is having the effect we are expecting, the effect that Representative Hewitt said that we are trying to get to support county attorneys to prosecute difficult, complicated cases that they don't have the resources to prosecute on their own. We need to have some oversight and accountability on that. This is not a theoretical problem. Take the case of Byron Smith. In 2012, he lured 2 teenage burglars into his house and gunned them down, shooting them multiple times. The Morrison County Attorney's Office asked the then Attorney General Swanson for help prosecuting the case. After some initial press coverage painted Byron Smith as a pro-gun warrior, the Attorney General's office turned Morrison County down. The late esteemed Washington County Attorney Pete Orput sharply criticized that decision. He called it a cynical political decision, and he should know he was someone who spent years in the Attorney General's office handling criminal cases like this one. Important criminal cases where a small county comes to the Attorney General's office and asks for help. When the Attorney General's office refused to help Morrison County, Pete Orput in the Washington County Attorney's Office actually took on the case. Pete Orput himself personally tried the case and obtained two first-degree murder convictions. This problem repeated itself in 2021 under the current Attorney General. On August 5th, 2021, Julian Daniel Valdez shot and killed another individual in Renville, Minnesota. The Renville County Attorney's Office asked the Attorney General to assist in the prosecution. At the time, Renville County is obviously a small county, and at the time, the Renville County Attorney's Office was dealing with problems from both ends. They were coming out of the COVID pandemic, and the courts were going to more in-person hearings, and that was causing a huge workload on the Renville County Attorney's Office, and they were facing workload problems and staffing problems as well. They were down to 2 attorneys and couldn't handle this kind of case, so they asked for help. And again, the current Attorney General's office refused to help. Renville County was forced to use county money to hire a former prosecutor in private practice, ironically someone who also had worked under Pete Orput in the Washington County Attorney's Office, to serve as a special prosecutor. So the A1 amendment simply asks for us to receive a report, to get the information that we would need to see whether this funding for the Attorney General's office is going to fix the problem that we're trying to fix. It would require the Attorney General's office to simply report to us what requests come from counties and what the outcome of that is. We currently mandate multiple reports from the Attorney General's office. If you go to the Legislative Reference Library website and search mandated reports for the Attorney General's office, there are 16 results. This would be a very modest report. It's a very common sense measure that would give us the information that we need to do oversight and accountability on the Attorney General's office. So I urge members to support the A1 amendment, and Madam Speaker, I request a roll call.
Representative Niska requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Member from Dakota, Representative Hewitt.
Madam Speaker, Representative Niska, thank you so much for this amendment. However, I'm going to have to ask the members to vote against it. As you referenced in your discussion, the Attorney General right now has to give us a report every year. And you're right, it's in the reference library. This would be redundant and costly and extend the bill. So I would ask members to vote this amendment down. Thank you.
Discussion to the amendment. The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I would remind Representative Hewitt that while we had the Attorney General in presenting in committee, the Attorney General said that he had 0 problems in providing reports to the legislature and 0 problems with addressing some of the concerns that were brought up in state government finance, namely some of these. So I'm mystified as to why you would encourage a no vote when the current office holder actually said that that doesn't sound like a problem. So I would urge a green vote to support the Niska amendment.
Further discussion. The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, this is an amendment that frankly is not about what has been done. It's about knowing what has been done or what will be done. This is an amendment about transparency. It's about accountability. We are providing millions of dollars in additional funding, and we as the legislature have a responsibility to know what is going to be done with those funds. We have a responsibility to the taxpayers to ensure that those funds are being used for their intended purposes. And in this case, frankly, as Representative Niska laid out, there are real problems with what the Office of the Attorney General does and does not do. Things that they should be doing to support particularly our counties in, frankly, really difficult cases that sometimes our smaller counties are less equipped to deal with. This is an issue of accountability. It's an issue of transparency. So if you want to go vote against that, by all means do so. But it's not a good look. This legislature should hold everyone accountable for the dollars that we are giving them to discharge their duties. That is our fiduciary responsibility as legislators, to track and know what is happening with those dollars.
Discussion. The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I just want to focus on the last couple words that Representative Hewitt used to say why to vote against this bill. He said, and I quote, redundant, and then I think 2 words later, costly. Well, both of those things can't be true. Both of those things can't be true. Either it's redundant, in which case this is just a fine clarification that we, in fact, want to know whether the Attorney General is telling counties no, which has happened, and imposes significant costs on counties when the Attorney General does it, or it's costly. It has some additional costs, which means it's not being done right now, which means it is absolutely essential to our oversight duties of the Attorney General's office to have this information. Words mean things. It can't be both. It has to be one or the other. And either way, this is a good amendment. It is a common sense amendment. This is probably going to be a 1 or 2 page report that can be filled out by a paralegal as each request comes in. They can create an Excel spreadsheet and send us that outcome. What's the request? What was the outcome? Did we do anything with it? That is essential information for us as we are thinking about giving the Attorney General's office $2 million out of our normal budget appropriation process, an additional $2 million to make sure it goes to help county attorneys prosecute crimes. Members, this is a bill that I want to support. This is a bill that I want to support, but the way it is written right now, the way that you are forcing it forward, is not something that anyone on this side of the aisle is going to be able to support. The Attorney General's office needs to help counties who don't have the resources to deal with violent, complex cases, to deal with those cases, and we as the legislature, in giving him that money, giving the office that money, we need to be able to know whether that money is going to the purpose that we are directing it towards. So members, I please urge you to vote yes for the A1 amendment. Thank you.
The member from Candy Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I think I'm trying to reflect what some of our members are saying. This is a bill I really want to support as well. We've been working hard in the drug task force areas. I've been having conversations with the Attorney General myself about how they need to step it up. They need to do a better job, and this bill is sort of trying to do that, but there is a lot of looseness in this bill that I'm uncomfortable supporting right now. We don't have their budget set up yet for this year, but already we're giving them $4 million in this bill that I'm wishing that we could just ask for a little more reporting. You know, my conversations with the Attorney General, he understands it. He claims there's a lot of reporting already, but I don't think this is going to, for $4 million, this is a pretty good deal. And I know we've got a lot of trust across this aisle to try to do the right things with our folks, with our county attorneys, with our prosecutors. We've got to put more people away that are doing really bad things in our communities. These folks that are bringing tens of thousands of fentanyl pills across the border, we have to give more resources to these folks. I want to support this. And so, Representative Hewitt, I hope that you rethink this. It's too expansive. It is not. They're doing a lot of reporting already. What's another couple of questions on that report? This is important to get it right. You've got members over here that want to support it. I'm going to support it if you take this amendment. But if you don't, it's like one of those things where we need to tighten things up. Because I know it'll pass anyway and it's going to get what you want. But we're just offering some tightness here. Just bring it together for us a little bit. I don't know why this is such a difficult request. So thank you, Representative Huska, for bringing this forward. Members, think about this. This is not a big ask. I really do hope you give this amendment a green vote. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Speaker Hortman and members, I'm not sure if the author was around. A few years ago, it was several counties had to go to court, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend themselves for obeying a duly passed law that was signed and was part of our statutes. But because the Attorney General's office didn't protect in court the law, the counties had to hire lawyers, had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in this body, we did a bill to refund that money so they weren't out all of that money for defending a law that we passed. So that past experience is why I want to make sure that we're fully aware of the costs imposed on our counties by obeying what we pass. and what the Attorney General's office is doing to help support those counties in their effort to support their citizens. A simple understanding would allow us to address any issues that come up in a timely fashion, not having years to get back hundreds of some counties aren't that big. Some counties don't have huge budgets, but they have people, citizens of the state, that require the appropriate support from the government. And I see nothing wrong for us being informed, knowing in a timely fashion, to be able to address things and make things better. So I haven't heard a single thing that I take as being a reason for me to not vote green.
Any further discussion on the Niska amendment? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the Niska amendment. Will the clerk please call the name of the member who is voting remotely?
Clardy.
Clardy votes nay.
Clardy votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Nash moves to amend Senate File Number 33, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A2.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am offering the A2, and I believe there are some amendments to the amendments that we would like to take up. And before we do so, there was a minor drafting error that came out of the revisor's office, and I believe that as we work through those will be addressed, and that we've got it figured out at the front desk.
There is an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Creshaw moves to amend the Nash amendment to Senate File Number 33, the second engrossment. The amendment to the amendment is coded A7.
The member from Morrison, Representative Creshaw.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. That is my amendment, and I'm just asking that we replace the language with and then insert waste, fraud, and abuse as it is. That's my amendment.
Discussion to the Creshaw amendment to the amendment. The member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm going to speak against the A7 amendment to the amendment for two reasons. First of all, this amendment is unnecessary because the Attorney General already has the authority to prosecute fraud cases if county attorneys request that assistance under Chapter 8.01. Chapter 8.01 is what gives the Attorney General authority to take cases from a county attorney if a county attorney so requests. So if a county attorney wants a fraud case handled, they can request that assistance from the Attorney General. The other reason why I'm going to recommend a no vote on this is because the amendment itself is faulty. It calls for investigation, and the Attorney General's office, like county attorneys, doesn't have criminal investigatory authority. Law enforcement investigates cases, presents those to county attorneys for charging. County attorneys then charge the case or request assistance from the Attorney General. So for those two reasons, I recommend members vote no on this.
Discussion, further discussion to the Creshaw amendment. The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And, I appreciate Representative Moeller and what she had to say, but, we've seen that the Attorney General's office has not engaged in their in exercising the authority they have when it comes to waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think it does bear legislating, adding this amendment to the amendment to put a finer point on that. You know, I mean, we saw pretty egregious examples of waste, fraud, and abuse over the summer and during the COVID years with Feeding Our Future. And the AG's office absolutely had the authority to request documents that would have brought that fraud to light, and they did not exercise that authority. They chose not to exercise that authority. So it does matter. It does matter that we add this language to include the investigation and prosecution of waste, fraud, and abuse in government. And it may require, in order to prosecute, it may require the request of a county attorney, but it does not require the request of a county attorney to exercise their investigative authority. This amendment to the amendment absolutely does matter. It absolutely does make a difference. And we have seen the Attorney General's office over the last several months. It wasn't even that long ago. But we have seen them choose to not exercise their authority when it's been made very clear, both in the press and by their own admission, it has been made very clear that waste, fraud, and abuse was known about, and they chose not to exercise that investigative authority. This amendment to the amendment absolutely does matter. We do need to put these things in place, and frankly, we as a legislature should identify what our priorities are. And this should be a priority for us. We see hundreds of millions of dollars appropriated by this body that go out the window in waste, fraud, and abuse, and we see it over and over and over again. This is not a new issue. We have seen it for years. In my short time in the legislature, there have been at least 4 or 5 significant cases involving waste, fraud, and abuse that are typically brushed under the rug and ignored. They're not dealt with. They've never been dealt with. So to say that this is unnecessary or that they must wait for a county is just not true. It's not true. The Attorney General, frankly, the Attorney General's office, let's just look at Feeding Our Future. They had the authority, the Attorney General's office had the authority to request financial documents that would have shown immediately and conclusively that fraud was taking place. And they chose not to exercise that investigative authority. They had the investigative authority to do it, and they chose not to. So it does matter that we put this into place and that we add this language of investigating and prosecuting waste, fraud, and abuse.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative Krisha, I would happily accept your amendment. And members, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want to direct some of these funds? And we do it all the time. We put in legislative intent into our bills through language that says, here's what we would like it to do. And whether it is something that is in existing statute, that we can certainly encourage the Office of the Attorney General to do that. But this is something that we're appropriating the money to do so. And it is a stipulation of the money that's being appropriated to have it look into waste, fraud, and abuse. And I would remind the author that in his initial draft of the bill that those very words were in his initial draft. It contained the words waste, fraud, and abuse. Miraculously, in state government finance, through an author's amendment, that came out. So perhaps it was the author's initial intent, thinking waste, fraud, and abuse would be a great idea to do, and then he changed his mind. But when we create legislative intent, we actually spell it out. We put that language into a bill. And then whomever gets that funding has to go by what that legislative intent is. And there have been a myriad of cases where it gets tried and the legislative intent is upheld in court. So of course we would want waste, fraud, and abuse, particularly, and I'm going to correct Representative Niska here, he said it was only $2 million. Actually, it's $4,042,000 plus $269 to start it off with, so a little seed money. But why wouldn't we want to stand the scrutiny of people in the state of Minnesota that says, certainly recognize that your county attorneys may need help and that they may need to raise their hand and say, we need your help on this. But why would we say to people in your district and my district and all 201 of us up here that we want to put guardrails around this to say that one of the things that you have to go after is waste, fraud, and abuse, particularly with some of the most rampant cases that we've seen and some of the things that we have seen in the most recent headlines regarding, as Representative New Brindley talked about, feeding our future. That was an egregious abuse, and I don't think any 201 of us would say that was good work. So if we are moving forward with enabling that office to pursue these things on county's behalf, why wouldn't we put in legislative intent the idea that says, when you're doing this, you should look for waste, fraud, and abuse? Thank you.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members. I appreciate the words of Representative New Brindley about the Feeding Our Future scandal. There are many, many examples over the years, and the Office of Legislative Auditor has a new report out that I commend you to read about the problems with oversight of grants. But there is a long history of waste, fraud, and abuse in our state government. Some of it is criminal. And what's great is that the Attorney General represents all of the state agencies in any disputes. So for example, in the Feeding Our Future scandal, they had the ability to investigate that. They had the ability to look into that. And what's also great about the way current statutes are written is that it's not just county attorneys that can ask the Attorney General to criminally prosecute something. The governor can do that. And I sure hope that the governor, when the Attorney General's office is representing the governor's agencies and is able to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse and discovers something that's prosecutable, I sure hope that under 8.01, the governor will ask the Attorney General's office to prosecute them. And I think it's important and quite common sense, frankly, for us as a legislature to say that this $2 million a year, $4 million in a biennium. I'm sorry, I'm still a regular person thinking about, we think about spending by the year. In this $4 million in biennial spending, that we can give some indication that one thing that we should do with this money is make sure that our state treasury is not being wasted. Our state treasury is not being defrauded from us. This is a good amendment, folks. Please vote yes. Thanks.
The member from Mauer, Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. I am very excited to be accepting this amendment to the amendment because we just recently received our most recent OLA report, which talked about oversight in our grants and waste, fraud, and abuse. And we've already heard talking about Feeding Our Future scandal, waste, fraud, and abuse, and that just happened to be through MDE. And wouldn't you know it, members, MDE is mentioned in the OLA report as not following at all any of the things that have been required of. It says in here that at the same time that several MDE templates and procedures do not provide sufficient instruction on how and when to carry out the requirements. It also has on here that while there was millions of dollars that MDE was
Point of order,
supposed
Madam
to be...
Speaker.
Representative Long, state your point of order.
Madam Speaker, Masons 101, we are not debating the Minnesota Department of Education today.
Representative Mueller, please confine your remarks to the bill before us. Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Long. We're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. And this is what has been found in our OLA report, which is about waste, fraud, and abuse, which is the reason why we need this amendment to the amendment. There were several egregious findings by the OLA about the MDE, and this would be under the purview of the AG to go and investigate. And I'm sorry, but OLA reports tend to be shoved under the desk someplace and put under and have a bunch of dust on them. Maybe it's a time for us to bring these to light, which says that one of these agencies that is under the purview of the AG that they can investigate has not been properly using funds, which is fraud and waste and abuse. Therefore, we need to be able to take this amendment to the amendment, because if you continue to read this, you will find that there has been several times that there has been no fiscal accountability, and there has been little done to make sure that our taxpayers know what's happening with the money. There's no transparency, there's no accountability. Representative Kresha, thank you so much for this amendment to the amendment. We need to vote green on this.
The member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, we were given a little, I think we were given a little misinformation. I don't believe it was intentional. But I'm reading a report right off the Attorney General's office, dated September 22nd, 2022, about feeding our future. Guess what? In their own report on their website, they talk about the Attorney General's investigation by their investigators into the Feeding Our Future Fund. The Attorney General does have investigators, and that's why this Representative Niska's bill is important, so we know what they have oversight of what the Attorney General's office is doing with over $4 million of state taxpayer dollars.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brinley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to clarify, we were told that only the attorneys can request help from the Attorney General's office. So I just wanted to make sure that there's certainty, because there's lots of shaking heads as I speak. However, the statute is 8.31. Investigate offenses. These are the additional duties of the Attorney General. This is what the statute says. Subdivision 1, investigate offenses against provisions of certain designated sections and assist in enforcement. It says, the Attorney General shall investigate violations of the law of this state respecting unfair, discriminatory, and other unlawful practices in business, commerce, or trade, and specifically, but not exclusively, the Nonprofit Corporation Act. The Attorney General shall investigate. This is a requirement of the Attorney General's office. This isn't optional. This is a requirement of the Attorney General's office. So yes, it is important to put a finer point on this and require, as is indicated in the amendment to the amendment, that this includes investigation and prosecution of waste, fraud, and abuse. It's time we make this a priority as a body. We, as a legislature, have a fiduciary responsibility to Minnesotans. We have a responsibility to our constituents to say, we hear you, we understand, we agree. And in fact, frankly, I believe 100% that every single person in this chamber is horrified by the Feeding Our Future scandal. Because every single person in this chamber wanted that money to feed kids, and it just didn't. $250 million, and that's the floor. We were told that's the floor. It's probably more than that. $250 million that was supposed to feed kids didn't. And the Attorney General's office they have a responsibility to investigate. And they didn't. It's time we make this a priority. We don't have unlimited money. Our constituents do not have unlimited funds with which to pay their taxes. Families in Minnesota struggle, and we over and over and over again say, well, they made a mistake. This matters. It matters that the Attorney General's office not only has the authority to, but they must investigate. And this just makes it clear that they must investigate and prosecute waste, fraud, and abuse.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I used to work at the Attorney General's office for about 13 years, and I worked in the criminal division there and handled prosecutions on behalf of counties across the state of Minnesota. And I'll just make it very clear. What we're doing here today with this bill is to expand the office's prosecutions on behalf of county attorneys across the state. That division, that office, does not have the ability to investigate crimes or to initiate prosecutions. The situations you're talking about relate to the Attorney General's authority over charities. That is an entirely separate matter than what we're doing here today, and for that reason, I continue to urge a no vote on this amendment to the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Morrison, Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, and thank you, Representative Nash, for accepting this amendment. A couple of thoughts. First of all, I'm not here for the Attorney General. I'm here for my constituents. Let me tell you how things work in the place where I legislate. Every weekend, my wife and I and my family, we walk to church, which is about a 2-block walk, and in between that, I get to hear all the issues of the week. I get to hear whether there was some money that came out of the hockey fund, or I get to hear about something that happened that resulted in fraudulent for a nonprofit. The people that I represent care about WFA, waste, fraud, and abuse. It's very important to them. It is a legislative role that I take very serious when I go back about instilling confidence and trust in what I do. They ask me to do this. I could care less about how the AG has its role right now, because my job as a legislator is to direct that activity, and the AG's office is to carry them out. Very clear about the separation of what I do when I talk to constituents, and I'm not going to door knock this summer and have people go, hey, what'd you do about waste, fraud, and abuse? And I'll go, I don't know, I hear the AG's taking care of it. No, I'm going to say, I offered an amendment, and I hope my members here accept that we put waste, fraud, and abuse in our legislative intent so that the AG's office can carry that out. That is the legislative role that we have. And for that, and for the folks that catch me in between my walks on Sunday and that catch me at the cafe and the coffee shop, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Representative Kresha requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Kresha, when you talk about representing your constituents, and I understand the questions they may ask of you, they may want to talk with you about the 2021 case in Morrison County, where the man strangled his wife to death in the middle of winter and then drove out of town to dump her body over a bridge on top of a frozen river. He was convicted of second-degree murder.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Point of order.
The member from Stearns, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mason's 101, questions before the body. Currently before the body is Representative Kresha's amendment to the amendment, specifically talking about investigation and prosecution of waste, fraud, and abuse in government.
Thank you. Representative Pinto, please relate your comments to the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam
Pinto.
Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Leader Demuth and Representative Kresha simply attempting to respond to your concerns about representing your constituents. There are several cases, members, in the last couple of years in Morrison County alone, Representative Kresha represents, in which the Attorney General's office was asked to intervene and handled criminal cases. That is the core work that we are talking about right now. And I'd hate to have any of our constituents ask us and say, what did you do when it came to having our county attorney in our county be able to get the help the county attorney needed? The question is, are we actually taking the steps to do that? Members, this secondary amendment and the primary amendment being offered by the minority in combination, I think it's important to consider them together, would actually remove the reference to related initiatives. I think that that's the right phrase, other related initiatives. So as we're focusing on this, we need to recognize that what you're proposing to do is to take out those related initiatives. What do they consist of? Members, they consist of a number of things: forfeiture of vehicles for those involved in crimes, implied consent, commitment of sexually dangerous persons. This is one of the things that those working in this unit work on. If we simply limit, if we take out that phrase, if we move forward with this secondary amendment and the primary, we are in fact not allowing those prosecutors to participate in that commitment of those sexually dangerous persons. And training, members, is a critical step. That's a critical aspect of prosecution. I trained a couple thousand officers around the state relating to sex trafficking. And I know that having those officers receive the training that they need in these areas, that enhances the prosecution. That is core work, but if you just describe it in this way, if you send the folks in this division off in other places, they are not going to be doing that core work. Members, let's focus on what in fact our communities are calling us to do, what our county attorneys, your county attorneys are asking to have happen. Let's vote down this secondary amendment. Let's get moving on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Morrison, Representative Crecia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Pinto and members. I'm just going to say it this way. What happened with the waste, fraud, and abuse and with the OLA are conversations we should have. I will tell you this. Thank you for bringing up Morrison County many, many times. I knew those students. I knew those cases. I knew the family of the young man that was shot in the deer stand. Let's not bring up singular cases when we're talking about our legislative. And fine, if you want to keep bringing up Morrison County, I'll walk you through those families. I'll walk you through those court cases. I'll walk you through every one of them. They were incredibly painful, as all of our counties have had. And fine, if you want to use the county that I represented to try to make your points, great. But let's go back to the fact that I still think waste, fraud, and abuse is an important thing, and we should be talking about that.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the Crecia amendment to the amendment. Members, please vote. Will the chief clerk please call the name of the member who is voting remotely?
Clardy.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Clardy votes no.
Clardy votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's another amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Grossel moves to amend the Nash Amendment to Senate File 733, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A8.
The member from Clearwater, Representative Grossel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, that is the goal of my amendment to the amendment is to make sure that we keep this money, keep these resources focused on what we really want to accomplish. We want to accomplish stopping violent crimes. We want to accomplish stopping crimes where our resources are squandered, and so on and so forth. So my amendment to the amendment is after and related initiatives, insert including organized gang crime, organized drug crime, and organized retail theft.
Discussion to the Grossel amendment to the amendment. The member from Ramsey, Representative Mahler.
Thank you, Madam.
Mahler, sorry.
It's all right. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm going to recommend a no vote on this because, again, this is something that the county attorneys can request the Attorney General's office to handle. And so it's already included, just like we would include murder and sexual assault. Those are the kinds of cases the Attorney General helps counties with, so they can make that request. The other thing I'll point out is that this is also a faulty amendment because it includes organized retail theft. We actually don't have a crime of organized retail theft, but good news, we're going to be hearing Representative Stevenson's bill in the Public Safety Committee tomorrow to create a crime of organized retail theft. So that's coming, but it actually doesn't exist in statute yet. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Clearwater, Representative Grossel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And you're right. You're right. These resources from the Attorney General's office do come at the request of the county attorneys, and that is why I'm asking that it be focused. And since we're going to have that bill coming forward, that'll be another good thing to use these resources for. When we're talking about giving the kinds of resources to the Attorney General's office to help fight crime and to help smaller counties that don't have these resources, to deal with these long and burdensome cases and which drain the resources and time of these small county attorneys, small counties and their county attorneys, which do not have the staff that the Attorney General's office has, such as like I mentioned, the organized gangs, the organized narcotics, and the retail theft, which that law is coming. So I thank you for that. Just to name a few, and you mentioned a few more, Representative Moeller, and I appreciate that. These monies, folks, need to be focused on these things. Right now, with the language as it is written, it leaves it too open and too vague. I don't like using the spray and pray method of targeting the crimes and with the resources that we have available to us. Again, it was mentioned that we have limited resources. We can't just be spraying and praying, folks, hoping it hits something and we have an effect on it. We need to focus our resources, make sure that we have the proper language. As everybody knows, words mean everything in statute. And if we have something that leaves us so open-ended that these resources are just going to go, I don't know where, but to be able to have these counties be able to know that these resources are there for these specific crimes to be help to be prosecuted by the Attorney General's office, that would be wonderful for them to know this. I can give you an example of where these resources from the AG's office, were used effectively and they were targeted. In the early 2000s, we had the meth lab manufacturing scourge, the meth manufacturing scourge that covered the state. It was everywhere. I worked on a task force where that was the main focus of our investigations for 3 years. Hundreds of meth lab manufacturing cases we did. We had the ability, our attorneys, county attorneys had the ability to reach out to the AG's office for help on these long, burdensome, and expensive cases. So that is why I'm asking you to vote yes on this amendment to the amendment so that we keep these monies focused and targeted on where they are needed most. We all know where they're at. Let's not leave it broad and wide open. And Madam Speaker, I would ask for a green vote on this. I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Representative Grosso requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Seeing no further discussion, the member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. Representative Hewitt, thank you for reminding me of my testimony or statements last week. And I want to echo Representative Baker's speaking about this bill, that really do want to vote yes on it. And this time I'm saying it beforehand. You give me a green bill on this amendment and I will vote for your final bill. One that actually makes sure, echoing what Representative Grosso said, that the money is going where we need it and where we think it's going to go. Organized crime, organized drug crime, gang crime. This is where we need the help in the outer Minnesota area. Give us something specific. I have my suspicion where I think it's going to go. There's probably a rule against saying it, so I won't. Give me a green bill on this where it's specifically going somewhere, and I will give you a green vote on the end. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion on the Grosso amendment to the Nash amendment? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll. Will the clerk please call the name of the member who is voting remotely?
Clardy.
Clardy votes no.
Clardy votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Swazinski moves to amend the Nash Amendment to Senate File Number 33, the second engrossment. The amendment to the amendment is coded A9.
The member from Lyon, Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this amendment really speaks to kind of what we talked about last week with House File 7. And we understand with the passage and the potential signature by Governor Walz of some serious litigation that may come about. And actually, just breaking news, about 18 minutes ago, there's an article right here in the Bismarck Tribune that talks about how Governor from North Dakota and his industry is going to move forward with a lawsuit against the state of Minnesota. And we don't want the governor, we don't want Attorney General Ellison to use other funds or come back to the legislature and ask, hey, we've got this lawsuit, we didn't see it coming. We didn't see it coming. We want to make sure that these dollars that are getting set aside come from those and what's used to defend, not come back to taxpayers, even though we knew full well when this was passed off the legislative floor and signed into by the governor. It's not too late that we can focus these dollars so that he knows that he needs to use these dollars and the dollars he currently has, not come back to the legislature, not use more taxpayers' money to defend House File 7 when we've blatantly gone against the Commerce Clause and trying to affect business in other states, but the passage of that. So I would ask for green vote and a roll call. Thank you.
Representative Swedzinski requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to ask members to vote no on the Swazinski amendment. It is already a core constitutional duty of the Attorney General's office to defend the state against any lawsuits, so this is unnecessary. And as Representative Moeller pointed out, these attorneys are going to be added to the criminal division, which is to be used to help support county attorneys. That is not the division that would be used in the defense of constitutional amendments, constitutional challenges. Thank you.
Any further discussion? The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Swazinski, for this amendment. Folks, members, this is the you broke it, you buy it amendment. As we're talking about giving more resources to the Attorney General's office, we need to be mindful of the strain that we, as a legislature, are putting on the Attorney General's office. Yes, this money is hopefully going to the criminal division. I think that's frankly an open question given the language of the underlying bill. But money is fungible, attorneys are fungible. The Attorney General's resources, overall resources, matter. And as we worry about whether we're giving them enough resources, we need to be thinking about the strains that we as a body are putting on the Attorney General's resources. So I encourage you to vote yes for this amendment, but members, as we go forward, please let's be mindful of the strain that we as the legislature are putting on the Attorney General's budget and resources as we continue to pass more and more laws that are going to result in more and more work for the Attorney General's office to defend against, frankly, losing constitutional challenges that are coming down the pike. So please vote yes for the Swazinski amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Swazinski amendment to the amendment. The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I heard it said from the other side that this money is going to the criminal division. Well, good news. What we did with the blackout bill was criminal. Vote yes.
Any further discussion? Sorry, I missed that. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment to the amendment. Will the clerk please call the name of the member who's voting remotely?
Clardy.
No.
Clardy votes no.
Clardy votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. We are on the Nash underlying amendment. The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and imagine my shock and yet disappointment at the same time. So I will be withdrawing this amendment.
There's another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Nash moves to amend Senate File Number 33, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A5.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. Well, this amendment would actually put up those guardrails that we've been talking about. And rather than just allow it to be one of the assumed duties or potential duties, once again, we're going to revisit the idea of actually putting something specifically by name, using words into statute to say that this is what that money is going to go for. And once again, we have talked on a number of occasions about the amount of money that is going to be appropriated, $4 million and change over the next biennium plus $269,000 in startup money. I would encourage you to go to a listening session or go to the grocery store in your district and stop somebody and say, hey, do you think that $4 million is a lot of money? And after they probably drop their rutabagas, they would say, well, of course that's a lot of money. $4 million is a lot of money. And if you're going to appropriate that kind of money to hand off to the Attorney General's office, you might also get an answer out of somebody to say, would you like for this money to be used to go after something as crazy as waste, fraud, and abuse? And they would say, of course I would. So think about the common sense approach that your constituents are looking at this place hoping for, dreaming about, that one day the Minnesota House would put forward a bill that has just a modicum of common sense. And I think that you would react to it in such a way that says, you know what, I'm going to take the Nash Amendment. Crazier things have happened. I'm going to take the Nash Amendment because I think that we should indeed specify in words, in writing, memorialize it for however long it takes for somebody else to change this law down the road, and say waste, fraud, and abuse is something that rises to the level that we want to articulate it in statute. This is not really much of a difficult conversation. You know, so as you're going to the grocery store, or maybe if you're in line at the gas station, or if you go to a basketball game or a wrestling match, or you bump into somebody at your place of worship, it'll be a little bit of a weird conversation where when you walk up to them and say, hey, friend, do you think $4 million is a lot? But they will tell you what we're trying to tell you, that it is not an absurd request to put it into statute that says, right here, we want this money to pursue waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, I will echo what some of our members have said. If you take this amendment, I think I might put up a green vote. And Representative Hewitt, you sat in committee and you were sitting side by side with the Attorney General, who then came to my office, sent me text messages, called me on the phone asking for ways to get my vote on this bill. Well, here you go. All you have to do is say, Representative Nash, I think this is an inspired piece of legislation, to quote Representative Davids. And I will put up a green vote, because what we're trying to get done is, when we have examples like Feeding Our Future or other things that we have seen over years past that rise to the level of acrimony for average Minnesotans, they'll stand up and say, what in God's name is this? And then they'll be able to say, well, at least we have a statute that says that the Attorney General can assist the county attorneys in going after this very same thing, as opposed to finding ways to obfuscate the entire thing. Oh, we don't need to do that. We could do that, but we're not going to do that specifically. We might do that, but we're also going to possibly walk away from the opportunity. So I think this is a good amendment. It puts things into statute that says we're going to take crime seriously. And let's reduce our conversation to that. Here we are on the floor of the House having to encourage one another to take crime seriously. Think about that. Think about how absurd that is, that we're framing the conversation in just that way. Now, I know there's an amendment to amendment, but I'm going to ask for a roll call on my amendment to start off with.
Representative Nash requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
And I will await the spirited conversation around the amendment to the amendment.
Discussion to the Nash A5 amendment. The member from Dakota, Representative Hewitt.
Madam Speaker, we withdraw that amendment.
Representative Hewitt, I'm not on the amendment to the amendment that was withdrawn prior to session starting. We are on the Nash A5 amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and forgive me, I was getting stressed out there over the amendment to the amendment that doesn't exist anymore. So, Representative Nash, thank you for your thoughts and your statement there earlier. And I look forward to working with you to expand and fund the Attorney General's office, because this would expand and bring more funds to the Attorney General's office. And I think you and I could work on some really good bills to help them with that, to definitely knock out more crime throughout the state. Because I'm really worried about that, because this does expand the scope of the bill. And I would love to work with you to figure out how we can do more work that you're session, because really we want this to focus on the criminal division and move forward. So, members, it's unfortunate, but we cannot take the Nash amendment. I would recommend a red vote.
Further discussion to the Nash amendment. The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Nash, I'll take up your point about the grocery store conversation. So I think if my constituent at the grocery store knew that in 1998 there were 12 full-time prosecutors in the office, and that when the current Attorney General took over there was 1, the Attorney General tripled it to 3. And if my constituent knew that the proposal here was just to add another 7, we'd like to add even more, of course. I think if the conversation is, should we be diverting our attention away from criminal prosecution and those specific activities that support criminal prosecution? I'm thinking my constituent is thinking that this is something we need to do. We're not going to get quite back to the 12, but my goodness, let's not get any less than that or divert our attention from that at all. Members, I would urge that we vote this down. Let's focus on getting the resources to the Attorney General's office that county attorneys are specifically asking to receive. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Pinto, I can't necessarily speak to the motives or foolishness of previous AGs and the decisions that they make on how they staff their office. But what I can speak to is the lack of wisdom and foolishness that exists in not taking a simple amendment that says waste, fraud, and abuse. That's it. Now, you can try to deflect the conversation, Representative Pinto, into what previous AGs have done. I'm not here to litigate what that is. I have almost no concern about what's happened in the past. The current AG is asking us to fund this level now. And you've heard from a bunch of our members, they would like to do this. I will also point out to you, Representative Hewitt, that in the original draft of your bill, you came forward and you did an author's amendment stripping that part out. We had conversations leading up to it, and you were asking for me to be mercifully brief and not as blunt as sometimes I am in committee. But here's the deal, guys. If we're going to take waste, fraud, and abuse seriously, then put it in statute. And I'm going to point out to you all again, you have professed your undying love for the concept of bipartisanship. I heard it all during the election, and I've heard it actually mentioned in committee, and yet have not seen much of it.
I'm just going to remind the body that we don't discuss motives. We discuss the amendment and the bill. Representative Nash.
I did not assign motives to any of the decisions that have been made to take or not take amendments.
Skating real close to the edge there, Representative Nash.
I told you I would. But if you want to send a strong message to Minnesota, what you'll do is you will say, today, we decided to be bipartisan. Because the Attorney General doesn't just represent Democrats, we know that. The Attorney General represents Republicans and Libertarians and Episcopalians and Pescatarians alike. All of those groups are represented by the Attorney General. Wouldn't it be novel to say that as you're rolling this bill forward, that you would also accept a common sense amendment that said that we're going to put guardrails into the bill that says, Minnesotans, waste, fraud, and abuse is unacceptable, and we are going to pursue it with reckless abandon from the office of the AG. Who would disagree with that? Who? Nobody that I know. Not one person that I know would say, now, come on, Jim, we're going to let that waste, fraud, and abuse, we're just going to let that slide because really, let's put our efforts into something else. No, that's not what they say. And I know that they don't say that because in preparation for bill debate, I asked some people. I did talk to some people at the grocery store. I did talk to some people at church. I did talk to some folks at a gas station. And I knew all of them. So I asked them, and they said, well, Jim, if this bill were not to articulate that it had waste, fraud, and abuse as something that we wanted to pursue, they asked me to vote against it. So Representative Hewitt, your decision, take the amendment, and I'm guessing that you'll see a bipartisan wave of effort behind this. And if it was such a outrageous thing that you didn't want to pursue, why did you draft it in your first iteration of the bill? And I can't question why you changed your mind, but you did, because you offered an author's amendment in state government finance that changed the morphology of the bill. You stripped out waste, fraud, and abuse.
Representative Nash, you've now gotten into motive. So under section 124,
Okay,
Mason's paragraph
I'll wander
3.
back into the middle of the lane. Well, members, waste, fraud, and abuse is important. Minnesotans expect it. They're asking you, they're watching you, they're expecting you to accept something as banal as waste, fraud, and abuse should be pursued with reckless abandon. And I believe I asked for a roll call.
You did.
If not, I'm doing it again.
You did. The little flashy light tells me we already went through this process.
I don't have flashy lights down here.
I do up here.
Wow.
Great perk of the job.
Okay. What a perk. What a time to be alive. So members, in appreciation of the blinky lights, we're all very jealous. I would encourage you to put up more single color lights on the board on this amendment and say this request to pursue waste, fraud, and abuse is a good idea. We all love the idea, and that we can all sing Kumbaya together after we all vote green on my amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion. The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just briefly, I need to apologize. I think my remarks earlier may have implied a criticism of past attorneys general. To be clear, we are the ones who fund the Attorney General's office. The budget, when the current Attorney General took over in 2019, was the same number of dollars as in 2004, like nominal dollars. That's us. The Attorney General's office has been asking for this for years. And members, every single dollar of this is needed to get up to those 10 prosecutors. It isn't even the 12 we used to have, to address the crime that county attorneys are asking us to address. That needs to be the focus of our work. I'd urge a green vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Speaker, members, the Nash Amendment would make this bill worthwhile because it would prioritize what this money is for. Prioritize the prosecution of violent criminals. Prioritize the prosecution and investigation of waste, fraud, and abuse. Without this on there, the Attorney General doesn't have to do it. It's what it's for, but he's not required. This is prioritizing where these funds are to be used for, to help our county attorneys who desperately need help because of the dramatic increase in violent crime and carjackings. Vote yes on the Nash Amendment.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. I was wondering if, well, I was going to ask Representative Liebling to yield to a question, but
She's not on the floor, Representative.
Well, members, over many, many years, we have seen audits and other reports with hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud in the committee area that Tina chairs. I was going to ask her, would you like to have a few $100 million more to spend on other items to help and assist the citizens of this state? Because when we're saying go after waste, fraud, and abuse, what that is going after hundreds of millions of dollars, basically just about every budget that is lost or wasted. And every time I see one of those audits, and it goes past this most recent one, which was in general, it's not about the food fraud. There have been multiple times. And by going after waste, fraud, and abuse, we discourage that in the future, but we also can gain back money and spend it on needed programs. So if you thought, boy, if we only had $50 or $100 million to spend on this, we could help the homeless, help single expectant mothers, help children, give better mental health resources and assistance. A few $100 million still goes a fair amount away. So if we're prioritizing, was it just a few million, 4 million maybe, in this bill, why don't we multiply that times 20 or 50? And that's what we will have to give to the people of our state in better programs, better resources. Because it almost makes me cry. It hurts when I see money that was meant for people that needed it, for programs our families and neighbors need, being stolen away. And frankly, it isn't this year, last year. It's been every budget year that I've been around. I see examples of this. And the way we put an end to this is actually say, we're going to invest and empower the Attorney General to help prevent waste, fraud, and abuse, to prevent and disincentivize these bad actors in our state, so that we will have we don't have to raise taxes. We just save that, and we have hundreds of millions of dollars to help. And vote green on this. And all my experience tells me this will save us more money than we're investing in the Attorney General in this bill. So the smart, prudent, intelligent thing to do, the caring thing to do, is vote green. Thank you.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And I appreciate the discussion about waste, fraud, and abuse, and that's very important. This amendment, though, does another very important thing, which is to really clarify and tighten up the language that we are using to appropriate this money. And I'm very concerned about the language in the underlying bill that this amendment is trying to fix. And so I was wondering if the author of the bill, Representative Hewitt, would yield for a question.
He will yield. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Representative Hewitt. So the underlying bill just says, for enhanced criminal enforcement and related initiatives, and Representative Nash's amendment is trying to add some important clarity. But I want to understand a little bit from you what related initiatives exactly means in the bill. So if you could explain what are the limits of the Attorney General's use of the money under the related initiatives language.
Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Niska. Plain, simple, straightforward, get the bad guy off the street. Plain, simple, forward. That's what this is about. This is about your district, my district, making sure that if our AG, if our county attorneys need help, that they can get it. That's what this is about. So it's sex crimes, it's murders, it fits the gamut on serious crimes. That's what that means. Thank you, Representative.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I was wondering if Representative Hewitt would yield for another question.
He will yield. Representative Niska.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Madam Speaker and Representative Hewitt. I understand that we want to get bad guys off the street. I'm wondering what the words in this particularly mean and what specifically what specific relationship is needed between the initiative and enhanced criminal enforcement. So let me ask you a couple of clarifying questions maybe. So in last summer, after the Dobbs decision was leaked, there was a rash of crimes against crisis pregnancy centers and pro-life advocacy groups. And in the midst of that, the Attorney General's office issued a consumer fraud report saying that they were targeting crisis pregnancy centers. I'm wondering, is that a close enough relationship between criminal enforcement and that initiative to be funded under the bill?
Representative Hewitt.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to phone a friend on this one because we're really getting into details, and I understand you're a lawyer. I'm going to give you a lawyer to talk to. So, Representative Moeller.
Representative Niska, would you like Representative Moeller, Pinto, or Stevenson, our suite of prosecutors, to yield to your question?
Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that I was hoping that the author of the bill would be able to explain the language in the bill, but if Representative Stevenson would yield,
Representative Stevenson, will you yield to the question? He will yield to the question. Representative Niska, do you want to repeat the question in case he wasn't paying attention?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Stevenson and I have a lot of these conversations in committee, so we might as well have it here. Representative Stevenson, my question is about what enhanced criminal enforcement and related initiatives means, and in particular, I was hoping for some clarity as to whether the rash of crimes against crisis pregnancy centers and pro-life advocacy groups in 2022 was enough of a relationship to the Attorney General's consumer fraud investigation, also targeting crisis pregnancy centers at the same time, whether that was a close enough relationship to bring that investigation within the scope of the funding that we are approving under this bill.
Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for looking out for me there, Madam Speaker. And Representative Niska, I don't blame you. I also am intimidated by Chair Moeller, so I don't blame you coming to me with that question.
Motives, Representative Stevenson.
I think that was a wise choice on your part, discretion being the better part of valor. I think, Representative Niska, that the text of this bill is very clear and very straightforward about what it allows the Attorney General to spend this money on when you talk about pursuing its criminal enforcement authority, which I know that you are very familiar with because we've discussed in committee many times the duties of the Attorney General under Chapter 8, and I think that Chapter 8 lays that out pretty clearly, and I think the questions that pertain to the specific fact pattern that you're talking about would relate very much to whether there's an allegation of unlawful conduct, criminal conduct, where criminal laws are being broken, whether county prosecutors are asking for the aid of the Attorney General's office or some other entity prescribed under law is allowing for that. So I think that operation of Chapter 8 is well established in law, has been for decades upon decades upon decades. And I would also just note that this particular appropriation is consistent with literally thousands of appropriations that we pass into law each and every year here at the legislature.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I don't think I heard either the word yes or the word no in those words. So I guess, Madam Speaker, I would take a whack at seeing if Chair Moeller could answer this question. So would Representative Moeller yield for a question?
She will yield. Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry I was the last choice here for you. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, you still have Representative Pinto, too. So county attorneys can request assistance from the AG's office to help prosecuting crime. So if they had a crisis pregnancy center that was vandalized and they were considering pursuing prosecution and wanted help from the AG's office, they could certainly request that help. To get to your question about the related initiatives, there are other things that those criminal attorneys do. For example, civil commitments of sexually dangerous persons, which I happen to have handled when I was at the AG's office in Greater Minnesota. So there are some other things like that. Representative Pinto spoke to this earlier, forfeitures, implied consents. Those are the kinds of things, training for the BCA, that other related initiatives relate to. So if we accept this amendment, we're actually taking away the ability for these new attorneys to do that important work, and that's why we should vote no on the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Moeller, I think you said no, but it's really not clear to me, frankly, that the Attorney General can't use the money that we are appropriating to continue to go after crisis pregnancy centers. And I'm also concerned if you know what, let's try Representative Pinto. If Representative Pinto will yield, I have another example that I'm curious
He
about.
will yield. Representative Niska.
So Representative Pinto, a number of criminal straw purchasers have purchased firearms from Fleet Farm. Fleet Farm did federal background checks on them, and apparently they improperly filled out the federal background check forms. And then those folks were charged with federal crimes. Again, just asking about the language in our appropriation for enhanced criminal enforcement and related initiatives. Can you explain to me whether related initiatives there would allow the Attorney General's office to use this money to go after Fleet Farm or someone else like that in a civil case? Is that related enough to criminal enforcement to be a related initiative that we are funding under this bill?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Niska, thanks so much for the question. So I start with the text of 8.01, which is what gives the Attorney General the power to do any sort of criminal prosecution. And what that says is that the Attorney General only steps in when a county attorney is actually making that request. So that's really the focus here is enhanced criminal enforcement through that. The way I interpret the related initiatives, and I know that this is the goal of the office, right, is to be able to respond to those requests from county attorneys. It's not simply taking a case to trial. There's a whole bunch of other activities, as explained by my colleagues as well. So that, I will say, Representative Niska, that is the focus. Like, it's not, there's not something else going on here. There's not some bait and switch. Your county attorneys, all the county attorneys are saying we desperately need to get this help, and the Attorney General's office has been asking for this for a number of years now. So, Representative Niska, I can just tell you that this is absolutely the focus and the need, and what is related, those initiatives are related, are to that criminal enforcement that is in 801. That only happens when a county attorney asks for the help in prosecuting criminal cases. That is the focus. That's what this is about.
Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There were a lot of words there. I'm not sure that I heard a yes or a no. And I certainly appreciate that there is a criminal division, and I'm hoping that all of the money will go to that criminal division. The problem is the way this bill is drafted right now, and what this amendment would try to fix, really doesn't limit the $2 million a year, $4 million over the biennium, how that is going to be used by the Attorney General's office. And again, there's a lot of words about a lot of different sections in the statute, but there's no statutory tie to what related initiatives means in this in the underlying bill that the amendment is trying to clarify. So really, I think the amendment is very common sense. It changes that really, quite frankly, vague language to say to provide needed legal services to prosecute violent crimes and crimes that financially harm consumers and businesses. This appropriation must be used to aid in the enforcement of the criminal laws of our state. And then there's some additional elaboration on that. That language would certainly allow the criminal division to train their criminal lawyers. It certainly would allow the criminal division to take care of all of the prosecution needs of a particular case if a county asks them to do it. And it's a far, far better way for us to appropriate money to the Attorney General's office than to give them money for enhanced criminal prosecution, quote, and related initiatives, which I've asked a few members on the other side of the aisle for some clarity about that, and frankly still haven't gotten it. So this is not the way, the bill, the way it's written, is not the way to deal with this problem. Representative Pinto, as I said earlier, I do want to vote for this bill. I do want to vote for this bill. I really wish that we had some more clarity as to where the money was going to go, that we could have some clarity that it's not going to be going to those examples, which I think would not be an appropriate way for that money to be spent and appropriated under this. And again, if we accept this amendment, I will vote for the bill. If we don't, I can't. It's that simple. Please vote yes.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the bill author, would Representative Hewitt yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Hewitt. My question to you is, I've been asking this question. We can't really get an answer, so I'm hoping that you will know. When the Attorney General when a county has requested the aid of the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General either chooses to step in and help or not, is the public entitled to know why the Attorney General is making that choice?
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Representative Long, please state your point of order.
Mason's 101, this is not a subject for this amendment. Could have been perhaps a question on a prior amendment.
Representative Long, could you indicate what's in Section 101 of Mason's?
Debate must be confined to the question before the body, and Representative New Brindley is asking a question that was relevant to another amendment, but not to this amendment.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question was to Representative Hewitt.
Representative New Brindley, can you just provide a little bit of a base for how your question relates to the amendment before the body?
Sure. The amendment is to provide needed legal services to prosecute violent crimes and crimes that financially harm consumers and businesses. The appropriation must be used to aid of the criminal laws of the state, respond to the unmet needs of counties, and to assist counties in combating waste, fraud, and abuse. This directly relates to the Attorney General's office assisting counties. And so my curiosity is, when the Attorney General's office chooses to not help or chooses to help, is there a basis for that decision that is given to the public, or to the county for that matter?
Representative Hewitt.
Madam Speaker, Representative New, I do believe that the Attorney General has told us of the counties that he was not able to help or that something else came up. So I don't think that that's not public information. And I encourage you to talk to him, because he'll let you know what counties they were. But there was, I believe, 2 under this term. So I think some of the stuff we're hearing tonight might not be real. I'm having problems with it because it's not what was told to me, and it's not what was told to the rest of us in committee. So I believe there was 2 that and I don't know if he really turned them down, but it just didn't fit the criteria.
Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Hewitt, I appreciate you letting us know what you were told in committee. I'm not sure that answers my question. I've asked other attorneys, and I've also asked staff if they could find the answer, and we have not been able to get the answer. But our belief is, this example from a few years ago that frankly was particularly horrific, this example from Morrison County a few years ago, where a man lured some people into his home and killed them. It was really horrific. And the county requested assistance from the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office chose not to help in that prosecution. My understanding, and from the questions I've asked, we don't know why that is. We don't know why the Attorney General's office chose not to help that county in aiding in that prosecution. So I think that this amendment, you know, we've talked a lot about waste, fraud, and abuse, which is, the reason we talk about that so much is because it's so rampant, frankly. It is rampant. And so it is important that the Attorney General's office step in and deal with that. But there's another side of this, and that is to prosecute violent crimes. To prosecute violent crimes, to respond to the unmet needs of counties, and to provide necessary assistance with county prosecution of serious offenses. We have heard examples right on this floor today of examples of pretty serious offenses of violent crimes where the Attorney General's office chose not to step in and help when it was requested by the county. So there's been lots of discussion on, well, the county has to ask for our help, otherwise the AG can't do anything, and you know, we're just hearing lots of red herrings about why this stuff just can't be. But right now, the Attorney General's office is not required to step in and help prosecute a violent crime and to provide that necessary assistance to a county. They're not required to do that. And so the Nash Amendment says that this appropriation must be used for those purposes. They can't choose to not help. They must help. And when you're talking about, again, egregious situations, like the one that happened in Representative Creech's district, and Representative Niska mentioned that fortunately the Washington County Attorney was willing to step up and help. A relatively small county with certainly not anywhere near the resources of the Attorney General's office. This is critical. This is critical. The Attorney General's office, and this would give those additional appropriation, that additional funding that they need. And if we're giving the funding that they need to prosecute crimes, to deal with the criminal division, then let's ensure that they are using that money to help our counties who can't do this on their own. They don't have the capacity that the Attorney General's office does. And so they should use those funds for that purpose. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Nash Amendment. The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thanks, Speaker Hortman. Well, once again, I'll give you this last opportunity. You've heard from a number of our members. They would like to vote for this bill. This amendment is your last chance to do that. Well, thanks for the laugh, whoever that was. Appreciate that. This is your last chance. We have offered these in good faith. We have tried to be prescriptive in the language because you're asking for an additional appropriation, and it is not untoward of us to say that if we do an additional appropriation, there should be some stipulations that go along with it. You have shot them down, and you've made it very clear that you don't want to do that. We have made it very clear that we would like to come alongside and prosecute criminals and give our county attorneys some help. That we would like to pursue, in addition to the things that you say are permissive, but we'd like to make it so that it is prescriptive. That's all we're asking, is to help us vote confidently with you so that we can provide our constituents a reasonable expectation that we are going to do things like violent crime, but also waste, fraud, and abuse. This is not asking a lot. In fact, it's asking very little. You want to appropriate $4 million plus $269,000 in startup cash. We're asking, great, help us help you. Help us put up some votes to say we want to put people away who need to be put away. We want to pursue justice. We want to do the right thing by the taxpayer of Minnesota. We want to be able to enable the Attorney General's office, whomever may occupy it now or in the future. We want to say that if you obtain funds, we want you to do these things. This is not a crazy request. I think that this may be some of the most earnest requests that we've offered through amendments for a long time. We want to prosecute criminals. We want to hold them accountable for their bad behavior, which may be a violent crime. It may be waste, fraud, and abuse. If you want to come and ask us for our support, you have to work with us. You've chosen not to, but I'm asking you one last time. You can put up a green vote, and you can actually help us go after waste, fraud, abuse, among all the other things that are articulated in this bill and this amendment. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion on the Nash Amendment, the clerk will take the roll on the Nash Amendment. Will the chief clerk please call the name of the member who's voting remotely?
Clardy.
Clardy votes no.
The clerk will
Clardy votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 33.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Any discussion to the bill? The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm disappointed not to be able to vote for this bill. I really am. I've been talking about this issue since 2017 when I was a candidate for Attorney General. The criminal division is under-resourced. And the Attorney General's office should not be a partisan office. We all voted for funding for the Board of Public Defense just a little bit ago. This bill should not be a partisan bill. Criminal prosecution should not be a partisan thing. The work of the Attorney General's office, even though the Attorney General is elected in a partisan election, the work of the Attorney General's office should not be partisan work. The Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer of our state. It is their job to uphold the rule of law, to enforce equal justice under the law. And I wish I was able to vote for this bill today. But I'm not, and we need to be honest about why. We need to be honest about the partisan root of the problem that we're trying to deal with. The Attorney General's office has been controlled by one party for over 50 years, and that has resulted in us getting to the situation we're in now with the criminal division being under-resourced. The two prior holders of that office before the current one, frankly, did neglect the criminal division. They did neglect the criminal division and allowed that criminal division to wither away and to be diminished. And I will give credit where due to the current Attorney General. He has called out this issue as a candidate and as an Attorney General to try to rebuild the criminal division. But the partisan approach of that office has damaged trust across the aisle. We have to be honest about that. It has generated distrust across the aisle. And members, the partisanship of this body has made the Attorney General's office's job harder. We talked about House File 7 and the way that is burdening the office of the Attorney General. There are other bills that are coming through this body that are also going to create burdens on the Attorney General's office. As we're talking about giving the Attorney General's office resources, we need to be mindful of the fact that House File 16, which is coming through this body and we may consider very soon, is also going to be challenged under constitutional grounds. I think the state of Minnesota will probably lose that, the way that that bill is written, but it will be challenged on constitutional grounds, and it will diminish the resources of the Attorney General's office if we pass it. House File 17, this is one of the things Representative Stevenson and I have chatted about a couple times in committee. It will be challenged, and the Attorney General's office's resources will be stretched if we continue on the path that we're continuing on. So we need to be honest about the partisanship of this body and the way that it's making the problem that this bill is trying to approach worse. And finally, the way that this bill was brought forward and the way that this bill was voted on today, the partisanship of the approach to this debate and the way this bill was drafted make it impossible for me to vote for it. We rejected specific oversight reporting just to make sure that this $2 million a year, $4 million in the biennium, is actually doing something to solve the problem that we're going at. Basic oversight. That oversight is not currently provided to us. It is not. The reports that the Attorney General's office puts out now do not give us all of the requests that are made by counties and the specific reasons why those requests are turned down. We need to exercise our constitutional prerogative as the branch of government that appropriates money to exercise some oversight, and we didn't do that. We rejected some more specificity on the money that was being spent. Again, I asked 4 members of the majority, including the bill author, whether 2, frankly, outrageous examples of things that the Attorney General's office might spend this money on are sufficiently related to criminal justice to be part of, to take resources away from this money that we are purportedly appropriating to help counties with their important criminal prosecution needs. We couldn't get an answer. All we have now in this appropriation is related initiatives. And if the courts ever have to go back and review our legislative history, they're going to have no idea whether the money we have offered can be used for things that are not money to the criminal division, just things that might be related to some crime somewhere. We rejected any reference to the crimes of waste, fraud, and abuse, which we know are rampant, which we know the Attorney General's office deals with. They dealt with it in Feeding Our Future. They deal with it in all kinds of enforcement actions. And the Attorney General's office could prosecute those crimes if the governor asked them or if counties asked them. It was simple. We should just call that out as an important priority for the $4 million in the next biennium that we are appropriating out of order. The Attorney General's office is going to come with a budget request. I hope to be able to support that budget request. Not real optimistic today, members. I'm not real optimistic today that I'll be able to support that budget request. But the Attorney General's office is going to come with a budget request, but we are jumping the line. We're giving the Attorney General's office $4 million out of order, purporting that we are going to support counties with what we would all agree, we would have a unanimous vote that this is an important priority of the Attorney General's office. We're all for it. But this bill today, because of the partisan actions of the majority, I can't support, and I'm sad to say, I urge a no vote.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Agbaje. Agbaje.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I didn't think I was coming up so quick, but that's fine. Members, today I'm standing in support of Senate File 33. So this addresses needs that we have in our criminal justice system that many of us have been talking about, I think, over the course of multiple years. And it's related to supporting county attorneys in their efforts to prosecute complex criminal cases. The funding presents an opportunity for us to stand together and support the needs in agencies in our state to fulfill their duties. As the Attorney General's office has informed the legislature, the office over the years has declined from a height of 12 attorneys to only 1. And our recent Attorney General has been able to move some of those scarce resources around, so we have triple that of 3 attorneys in the criminal division in the Attorney General's office. With those 3 attorneys, this Attorney General's office has supported 33 cases around the state where county attorneys have needed support. Counties where we see that there's 3 or less attorneys in their entire office. The Attorney General's office is able to step up and step into these cases when specifically requested, as outlined in Minnesota Statute 8.01. And so while we can applaud our government doing more with less, when we have the resources like we do now, we should ensure that people can do their jobs without hardship. We shouldn't be making it harder for the Attorney General's office to offer help to county attorneys who may not have their own resources to prosecute crimes and hold people accountable. This funding would allow the Attorney General's office to staff up the criminal division with 7 additional attorneys and 2 paralegals. This means that county attorneys would not have to worry that if they seek a request from the Attorney General's office, that they could be turned down because of a lack of resources. It is our duty as legislators to fund our government and ensure that it is meeting the needs of Minnesota's residents. This long-standing request would do that, and I urge members to vote yes.
The member from Isanti, Representative Johnson.
Madam Chair, members, I have some concerns with this bill. We tried to prioritize prosecution of violent criminals. We tried to have accountability for those who fraudulently take money from the grants. We received the OLA report on our grant procedure, and we have problems. Not just Feed Our Children, we have problems all over. But there again, my priority is putting violent criminals behind bars where they belong. It's unfortunate that when Attorney General Lori Swanson was in office, she dismantled the criminal division. We didn't change their funding. They still had the funding for that criminal division, but they dismantled it and went elsewhere. Well, Representative Hewitt, under your bill, you use the term related. Related initiatives. We have no clue what that is. It's not defined. Couldn't get a real straight answer what it was. But we also have another term that I'm concerned with: enhanced criminal enforcement. The Attorney General doesn't enforce the laws, he prosecutes the laws. So by reading this and the way this is written, and we tried to fix that by prioritizing where the funds went, but this, more than likely, the way it's written, the Attorney General doesn't have to help counties that need help. The law still reads in Chapter 8, may assist when asked. So this bill's got problems the way it's written very poorly. And again, we tried to fix it by prioritizing where the funds went and having accountability of where those funds went. Now, I'm disappointed that where it is, I want to help our counties. They need help. violent crime is skyrocketed. Granted, the last year I think it's come down just a little bit, except for the carjackings, they're still up. Or should I say armed robbery of your car, because that's what it is. But this, the way it's written, I'm not sure if it's going to help or not, because the Attorney General had wide latitude what he can do, because we did not prioritize where these funds went. We don't have the accountability of where these funds are going to go. And unfortunately, although I want to help our counties because they need help, because even in greater Minnesota, they're getting overwhelmed, especially in the area I live in and surrounding outside the metro area. Guess what? They're jacking the cars down here, driving them up to my community and doing the burglaries. And that's causing headache with our law enforcement community and our county attorneys doing the prosecutions. So with that, unfortunately, because it doesn't have the prioritizing where the funds go or the accountability of what they're to be used for, I cannot support this bill. I suggest we vote this down right now, bring it back into committee, and fix it so the funds are prioritized into assisting our county attorneys in the prosecution of violent criminals and in the prosecution of those who commit serious fraud, not just on our elderly, but the serious fraud, waste, and fraud, I should say, with some of the nonprofits taking our money and sending it out of this country. $250 million. 2.5 years ago it was discovered. Still nothing. It's crickets. And the Attorney General's office is supposed to be the one dealing with this. Crickets. So with that, members, vote red, and let's fix this bill the way it should be done.
Further discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, members, I'm pretty confused at this point. So, for the last, certainly for the last year, all we've been hearing about is about crime, crime around the state, crime around the metro. Members, our county attorneys are calling on us to take this step. They've actually been calling on us to do this for the past, this will be the 4th out of the last 5 years. The only year that they didn't, there was a pandemic happening at that point. That's the only reason. And members, it's pretty simple. If you want to have your county attorneys in your individual community receive the help that they are asking for, then you'll vote yes for this. Members on the other side keep talking about how, have mentioned that the criminal division is under-resourced. These are resources. I don't know what else to tell you. They've said that the resources are stretched. These are resources directly to go to something that they say, and I don't want to question motives on the House floor. I'm going to assume that you actually meant what you've said at various points in the past months and years. But if so, why would you possibly vote against having criminal prosecutors to assist county attorneys in prosecuting cases in your communities? You say that you want more clarity. The county attorneys asking for this have said it is perfectly clear they are supportive of this without any of the changes that were discussed in the amendments, okay? It's real simple. Criminal enforcement, statute 8.01, Attorney General only steps in when a county attorney asks for it. Enhanced criminal enforcement, because right now what we've got is inadequate, not because of anything regarding the AG's office now, but because of our lack of response to the requests that have been made. And yes, related activities, because, as we've said, if all that happens is that prosecutors simply show up in court, you're missing a massive opportunity to do training, to commit sexually dangerous people, and a number of other activities done in that criminal division. Just fundamentally, members, what I keep hearing you refer to is the idea that the Attorney General's office is somehow turning down help from counties, not responding to help. There's only one group of people right now that are in the position to be turning down help that's requested from counties. That's us, and that's anybody who's voting no. If you believe in helping counties, you're going to vote green. That's what they're asking us to do to meet a need that you have specifically identified as a need that needs to be met. Don't overthink this, members. It's real simple and really clear in the views of your own attorneys in your own communities. And they are right. It's real simple. Let's get the resources to where they are needed to address criminal concerns, to support our communities. Members, vote green.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Well, thanks, Madam Speaker. Before this bill came to State Government Finance, the Attorney General stopped by my office, had an appointment, and said, Representative, here are the things that we would like to do. Here are the things that we're requesting. And in that conversation was a conversation around waste, fraud, and abuse. And I put myself in a position that I said, well, you know what? I think I could get behind that. And then it hits State Government Finance. I'm reading the bills the night before, and I see that the initial engrossment of the bill has waste, fraud, and abuse in it, and then I happen to notice, oh, there's an author's amendment that's going to strip that out. So I got an approach from the AG who was here a minute ago, and gosh, I wish we could have asked him a question, but we can't. But so the initial approach was waste, fraud, and abuse included. Initial iteration of the bill, waste, fraud, and abuse in the bill, stripped out author's amendment, and now we're here. And we have offered up a bunch of amendments, once again encouraging the majority to consider the presence of an amendment that would put those additional guardrails in order to garner support. We want to do this. We want to prosecute criminals. We've long had that as one of our main tenets. We have said that for a very, very long time. And all we're asking now, which is now too late because you've shot down all the amendments, we were asking simply, help us be able to go back to our districts and justify not an appropriation in his base budget. This is an over and above. So this is sort of like when you go to your parents and you say, I need an addition to my allowance. You have to justify what you're going to do with the allowance. Parents get to put some guardrails around that. It is not crazy for us to ask, as we're doing this, that some of the amendments that got blown up, that we put some guardrails in. You said no. A number of us have said, if you do this amendment, I'm agreeing. I said that several times. I can't say that now. Because you chose to ignore simple, basic requests that I think if you were to frame to an average person in any one of our districts in a conversation, they would say, why would you not put that in? What would possibly possess you to say no? You know, we often use the term around here, belt and suspenders. We were offering you a belt and suspenders. We said, great, you're going to do this? Put the belt and suspenders approach here, and we're with you. After the committee stopped, the AG did reach out to me via text message and telephone saying, Representative, what can we do to maybe change your mind or to be supportive of the bill? My support was clearly predicated early in committee. Do these things, and I'm your huckleberry. But you've said no. That message is a very clearly defined one. It's a clearly understood one. And once again, as we have those conversations in the grocery stores and other places, that'll be the conversation. Someone may say, Jim, why did you not vote for that bill? And I said, well, we couldn't put up a basic set of guardrails around this to further focus an additional appropriation, asking, much like the initial bill was written, that it would include waste, fraud, and abuse. And the reason that people in the districts are asking for that, you know why. You know why. It caught the headlines around the Twin Cities and around the state and around the country for months and months and months and months. I watched the FBI press conference and I'm like, wow, that's a lot. People noticed the waste, fraud, and abuse, and they are simply expecting and asking that we do something about it. Not the base appropriation that's coming. We might have amendments to that, Madam Speaker, down the road. But for today, you decided to say no again and again and again. I may have missed a couple of agains, but that was your choice to send a message to Minnesota that you are not interested in putting up guardrails. So that's on you. I'm voting red.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Moeller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to mention for a minute Pete Orpett. He was brought up when we were talking about the amendments. Pete Orpett was somebody that I worked with at the Attorney General's office. He was the Washington County Attorney, and he also had worked for the Hennepin County Attorney's office as well. And it was mentioned that he took on a case that the AG's office declined, and that happened back in 2012. So that was administrations before the current administration. And Pete Orpett, if you knew Pete, would actually be rolling over in his grave right now if he knew we were talking about people wanting to vote no because we didn't adopt any of those amendments before. And if you knew Pete, he would have some choice words to describe what is going on right now on the House floor. Members, there is absolutely no reason to not support this bill. Your counties want this. The Minnesota County Attorneys Association wants this because your counties across the state of Minnesota know how important it is to have this assistance to prosecute cases in their communities, the violent crimes in their communities. If this is truly your priority to prosecute people and hold offenders accountable, then you must vote yes on this bill. There is absolutely no reason to vote no. The kinds of cases and crimes that we're talking about that this division handles include murders, sexual assaults, white-collar crimes, organized crimes. All of those various crimes, if your counties need assistance, they can go to the Attorney General's office and ask for help. Currently, there aren't enough staff members in that division to help because of decisions made by this legislature to underfund that office for years. And I might be dating myself when we talk about how that office had 12 attorneys 25 years ago. I was hired by Skip Humphrey, so I was one of those last attorneys hired on to the criminal division at that time. And we had a white-collar crime unit. We prosecuted all those types of cases around the state. It was mentioned the meth lab cases. I believe there was actually additional federal funding for some of those cases. But we did all of those things because the office at that time had resources to do that work. In addition to the prosecutions, that division also does criminal appeals for probably most of your counties here. And I mentioned this in committee. There was a time when someone would say what county they were from, and I knew immediately who the county attorney was in that county because I handled so many of those cases over the years. They do a ton of work for your counties, those small offices especially, who can't handle those either complicated cases or the appeals because of the work they have, rely on the Attorney General's office to do that work. It is very crucial. And these amendments were not guardrails because these are cases that we're talking about that the Attorney General already has authority to prosecute under Chapter 8.01 if your county attorney requests that assistance. So if you vote no on this bill today, you're saying you don't want your counties to have help in prosecuting cases. Members vote yes. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We just heard, oh, your county attorneys support this. I'm wondering how many read the original language, which was talked about repeatedly over on this side, that specifically focused on what the counties wanted. We hear, well, we aren't giving them the budget for this portion. Frankly, constitutionally, there's a job for the Attorney General. The Attorney General is elected to set the priorities. So if the priorities were to take care of the crimes and help the counties, it would have been done. So we said, oh, we're going to do a bill. And apparently you had very good language. I wasn't in committee because I'm not on that committee. Apparently you had very good language to begin with. A lot of people liked it. In fact, they liked that original language so much, amendments were drafted to get back towards that language. And I'm thinking a lot of the county attorneys that are supporting this activity maybe read that original language and said, wow, this would be great. Representative Pinto mentioned this bill will support. I think instead of the bill saying shall, I think it uses the word may. That's what came up in one of the discussions about amendments, that they may cover the things that the original language was supporting. They may go after fraud, waste, abuse, may go after violent crime, but apparently we aren't specifically listing it in the bill, so there's a foggy little thing. And if we really want to address something that's not being taken care of, we should address it. Because the priorities, if we give a fuzzy little thing in the language, the priorities are set by the AG, which may not align with the original intent of this body. Frankly, what are the major crime issues? If we ask our citizens, neighbors, communities, one of the things, at least in my area I hear, is the fact that violent crime, which we make national news frequently for the violent crime we've been having, that's an issue. We got people scared to drive in parts of our state at night. They didn't used to be. There's a lot of concern. So violent crime. Anyone that's listened at all has heard about waste, fraud, and abuse. They're shocked that we didn't automatically jump on hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud. Stop handing it out, prosecute, and prevent the continue of it. We're doing a disservice here. We're not focusing, and specifically in the language focusing, on what is needed, what is being asked for by our citizens, our neighbors, our communities. That's why we're here. We can do better. We must do better. This is not there yet.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brinley.
Madam Speaker and members, once again, I really like to pay attention to the debate on the floor to see sort of the direction that we're going. And we've heard lots of things talked about. We've been told that this appropriation is to help our county attorneys, that's the point of it. We've been told that this bill is going to provide an additional 7 attorneys and 2 paralegals. We've talked about how the criminal division is under-resourced. But here's the problem. I think there's some confusion from the majority party about what is actually on the table, about what bill we're actually talking about. Because there is no language in this bill before us today that requires these funds to be used to help our counties. That language was removed. That language is no longer in this bill. There is no requirement in this language to assist with crimes that financially harm consumers. Waste, fraud, and abuse. Because that language was removed from the bill. There are no additional attorneys or other staff in this language, in this bill, because that language was removed from the bill. And so while I appreciate the obfuscation and that we're trying really hard to pretend that this bill before us today is the same as the bill that was originally introduced, but it's not the same bill. This bill, this language, has no requirement to help our county attorneys. This bill, this language, provides no obligation to help with crimes, with financial crimes that harm consumers. This bill, this language, has no requirement for the Attorney General's office to hire additional attorneys or paralegal staff. It's not here. It's not in the language. And we keep being told, okay, but this is what it is. Well, that's not what your words say. I am exhausted by what we do in this body and how we say, well, this is what I mean. Well, frankly, it doesn't matter what you mean. Because what the words on the page allow has nothing to do with what you're telling us that you mean. And frankly, we keep hearing about, somebody said, all we've been hearing about is crime. The criminal division is under-resourced. Well, we actually agree with that. The majority party is 100% on board with that and on solving the problem we have in this state with crime, and particularly violent crime, as we have seen a massive uptick. But this language, the plain language in the bill, guarantees none of that. And in fact, this is what we're so concerned about. This is why we have such a problem with this language. Representative Niska, try as he might, he talked to a lot of attorneys today, and yet we could never get a definition of related initiatives. 2 little words in this bill, related initiatives. Because frankly, everyone in this chamber, I guarantee everyone on this side of the chamber, is on board with enhanced criminal enforcement. We've been begging the majority for enhanced criminal enforcement for years now, literally years. But the problem is those next 2 little words, related initiatives. Related to what? Related to some crime, somewhere, as defined by the Attorney General? What does that mean? We don't know, because we asked multiple attorneys who are presumably voting yes on this bill today, and no one could tell us, or no one was willing to tell us. But frankly, we've got a lot of problems in this state. We do have counties who are hurting, who are asking for help, and sometimes they are being denied that help. And we have no idea why, on very serious criminal cases. But instead, our current AG's office is spending resources to go after the governor of Florida on multiple cases. They're spending money to go after a former political opponent. So yeah, we are really concerned when we see words like related initiatives that we can't define or we won't define. We really, again, we've been begging this body for years to do something to deal with the crime in this state, particularly the violent crime. Begging. We've been begging this body to do something, anything. Hold a hearing, a single hearing, that would be great, on the waste, fraud, and abuse that we know is happening. But we've gotten nothing. We've gotten nothing. And now we're this close. We're this close with this bill. We are so close with this bill to dealing with that enhanced criminal enforcement. But then we've got those two little words, related initiatives, that frankly are undefined. And I suspect that someone from the majority party is now going to stand up and tell me what related initiatives are. But frankly, it doesn't matter what you say. It's the words on the page that matter. And at the end of the day, this will be defined by the Attorney General's office. Because we as the legislature have chosen to abdicate our responsibility in defining it for them. This is our job. It is our job to define that, to ensure that these resources are being used for their intended purpose, to ensure that these resources are being used for that enhanced criminal enforcement. We offered a lot of amendments today to try to bring this into focus, to try to bring some definition to what those related initiatives might be. And we were thwarted at every effort. Every effort, we were thwarted. We were told over and over and over again, particularly when it comes to waste, fraud, and abuse, the Attorney General can't do anything. He can't do anything. Well, he can do something. It's very clear. It's very clear in Chapter 8.31 that not only, I already read the language that the Attorney General shall investigate, which our Attorney General chose not to do, but it also
Point of order,
says,
Madam Speaker.
State your point of order.
Masons 114, conduct of an executive or other official shall not be the subject of debate.
Representative New Brindley, can you confine your remarks to topics other than the conduct of an executive branch official? Representative New Brindley.
So 8.31 also says the discovery may be obtained without commencement of civil action and without leave of court. What that means is that this can be done under the AG's own authority, their own initiative. They don't need anyone else to give them the authority to investigate. They can do that on their own. It also says that when the Attorney General has information providing a reasonable ground to believe that any person has violated or is about to violate any of the laws of the state in Subdivision 1, they've got the power to investigate. And we know, certainly with Feeding Our Future, that was known. And then it also says that in connection with investigation under this section, the Attorney General, upon specifying the nature of the violation or suspected violation, may obtain discovery from any person regarding any matter, fact, or circumstance not privileged, which is relevant to the subject matter involved in the pending investigation. The Attorney General's office absolutely has authority on their own, without anyone else. It does not always require a request from a county attorney. The Attorney General's office has their own independent authority. And so while we tried to bring this into focus tonight, while we tried to define what these related initiatives might be, we tried to say it should be a priority in this state to ensure that those resources are used to help our counties prosecute crime, to ensure that these resources are used to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse. And the majority party said no. The majority party has removed their own language with any definitions of how this money needs to be spent. And it's wrong. We are abdicating our responsibility and our authority as the legislative branch to appropriate these funds and ensure that they are used for their intended purpose. And what a sad day it is that the party that has been begging for enhanced criminal enforcement is going to have to vote no on such a poorly worded bill.
The member from Dakota, Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. And members, it's unfortunate that this bill has a nondescript purpose in there, and I happen to be on the State Government Finance Committee where this bill briefly made a stop. One of the things that just last week, the Attorney General's office was there presenting an overview of their budget, and we asked a question of how much additional funding from the current biennium in hard dollars are they requesting in their budget, and what percentage is that? It's kind of a simple, fair question. As legislators who approve the budget, spend the money, our constituents should know what the spending increase is. We do have a rather large historic surplus. And when the governor's budget came out, it's a 25%, almost 26% spending increase. And our constituents want to know how we're spending that money. So I asked the Attorney General's office how much they're spending in addition to what they currently have as base and what that percentage increase is. And Madam Speaker, would Representative Hewitt yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative, you're the vice chair on that committee. Can you tell us? The Attorney General was going to email the committee members because he didn't have that available. Can you tell us what the percentage increase of his budget request will be compared to his current budget?
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Representative Long, please state your point of order.
Mason's 101, the debate must be confined to the subject before the body.
Representative Koznick, you have the floor, and you asked Representative Hewitt to yield. And do you have more to add to your question?
Well, Madam Speaker, we're in front of us a bill that spends money on the Attorney General's office. The question was in regards to the Attorney General's office, and I would like the author of the bill, if he could answer the question and enlighten the legislature, enlighten Minnesotans on how much the Attorney General's office request is to spend.
Madam Speaker.
Representative Hewitt.
Madam Speaker, Representative.
I hadn't recognized you yet. We always go through the speaker. Representative Hewitt.
Madam Speaker, Representative Koznick. Right now, are we dealing on this bill? Like you, I would like to see those numbers also. I will be happy as the vice chair of that committee to request that if you haven't gotten it yet. I'm sure that we are going fast. Isn't that great? We're getting stuff done. And I'm sure the Attorney General is doing the same. And I'll make sure that we get those numbers to you this week, okay? Thank you.
Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the dodge of the answer, but the forthright that we have not been provided that information by the Attorney General's office. But members, if fill you in a little bit, this is a separate, the bill that we're on here is a separate from their original or base funding. However, what I understand is that their base funding, in addition to the bill, well, not including the bill that we have before us, how much do you think that is, spending increase? Almost 75% of spending increase. $39 million more than what we provided in the previous biennium. 75%. And here we've offered some amendments just to put some priorities in place into this language that's poorly written. But Democrats are voting against specifically putting money towards prosecuting violent crimes and rampant fraud. And with the 75% increase in their spending request, they can't put some guide rails to enshrine what the priorities are for the supplemental bill, apparently, that we have here. It would be irresponsible to pass this bill and spend this money when the Attorney General's office can't tell us how much extra they want in their budget, but they're willing to come to committee and talk about all this other stuff, but not give us the simple, hard numbers. Minnesotans should know that we are reaching out to try to collaborate and compromise. Excuse me, I have the floor. We're trying to collaborate and compromise with Democrats and put some priorities and enumerate it that we want violent crimes and rampant fraud to be addressed in this bill that's before us. So it would be, it's not unfortunate, it's irresponsible to vote for this bill. With a 75% increase and $39 million more dollars being asked in another bill. And so members, with this nondescript purpose and Democrats voting against specifically putting money towards prosecuting violent crime and dealing with rampant fraud, it's irresponsible to vote for this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for this interesting night. Couple quick things that I want to just refresh here. The bill was written to be vague, to be broad, and it was written also with your county attorneys. They came and consulted on the bill. This is the language they wanted. I'm still looking for this amendment that you're talking about, Representative Nash, because I can't find it. When we took this to committee that day, this is the bill we presented. There was no amendment that took out waste, fraud, and abuse. Let's talk about that real quickly. Waste, fraud, and abuse can be investigated in this bill. It's so broad that that can be taken care of. The other part of it is the AG's office, the Attorney General himself, answered this question in committee about the food deal. And he is very clear on it. He started investigating it. Because it's federal money, the feds came in and clawed it. And he cooperated. And he's still cooperating. And when you say you hear crickets, we're not hearing crickets. There have been arrests continuously. And there have been people charged and went to jail, and money has been clawed back. But that's not what we're talking about here today. What we're talking about is your counties. In mine, in theirs. In making sure that we can prosecute, that we can get the bad people off the street. That's what this bill's about. You have been talking to us for the last 2 years about crime and how important it is that these people do time and how important it is that we prosecute. We brought you a bill. And I don't understand why this has been resisted, but we'll go forward. 2 a.m. in the morning, about 25 years ago, I got a call on my radio to respond to the fixed-wing aircraft to go somewhere in Minnesota. We took off, got up there, got the stretcher out of the airplane, went to the local hospital. We were told that this woman was found on the floor unconscious. We intubated, got her ready for flight. And you always do something with your patients. You want to make sure the family member says bye. This woman was in pretty tough shape. She had a 4-year-old. We lowered the stretcher down to the floor so she could hug her mother. All the clinicians were around her. The doctor was around her. The child said something real quickly. Mommy, Daddy didn't mean to do this. Every police officer in this room and every prosecutor just perked up. Because guess what I became? A witness. A witness to a crime. Sure enough, a few months later, I get the subpoena. We're all geared up to go up to this town. And what happens? It was settled out. We went to the prosecutor and said, what happened? We just don't have the staff, and we were all happy with the way this went. You know, there were victims. The family were victims, right? The victim themselves was a victim. But so are the people that work on these people. We're victims. We want our day in court to explain what we saw that day. This is in your counties. It's in my counties. Last story I'll share is another one. Many years ago, when DNA was first coming along, I got called out. Again, the same way, bad weather night. We had to drive way out to the western area to pick up a 16-year-old that was sexually assaulted. We put her in the ambulance, get back to the place that we took her in the cities here. I got to be real careful on how I phrase a lot of this. Weeks later, we were called. They wanted every clinician's DNA on that case. The reason is that the person that's being accused of the assault was a very wealthy young man that lived in that town, and his parents had means. And they brought in a high-buck lawyer that knew how to do DNA. But this county did not have that means. And basically, that's one of those cases that had to go to the AG's office. That one we did go to court. That one was tried. That one was taken care of. That's the cases we're talking about. But there's other cases here. Again, to go back to it, if we would have accepted some of these amendments, our AG wouldn't have been able to do forfeiture. Basically wouldn't be able to do sexually dangerous predator commitment. That's a big deal. It's a big deal for your counties. And pension, basically, persons in civil commitments. Those are really big, costly cases for your county. I get it. You weren't happy because we couldn't get an agreement on the amendments, but your county attorneys helped write the language in this bill. So all I'm asking for you to do is reconsider and vote green tonight. Thank you, members.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I always appreciate that when our name is mentioned, you let us go next. Well, Representative Hewitt, there's things that we believe, and there's the truth. Your bill introduction was January 4th. Here's that engrossment. On that engrossment, on lines 1.8, it says the prosecute violent crimes and crimes that financially harm consumers and businesses. Asked the Attorney General, and he's in my office, does that mean waste, fraud, and abuse? The answer was yes. Then, interestingly, your author's amendment in committee on January 19th, whoop, changes, gonzo. So you should have kept up with your own bill versions because you had it in the bill, and now it's gone. So it reads pretty plainly. Doesn't take, a degree from Harvard to figure that out. It says right here, I can walk this over to you if you like, but it says very clearly in your first engrossment that the crimes that financially harm consumers and businesses was in your bill. Now it's not. So I was right, still right, that your author's amendment that was offered in committee in state government finance stripped that out. It was also after a conversation that you and I had on the floor where you said that your bill, you knew that we had the AG dead to rights on some of the things that they should be doing, didn't do. But as to the question about saying, oh, I don't know, I don't see it in the bill, Representative Nash, I don't remember the author's amendment, Representative Nash, right here. You had it in your bill.
Representative Nash, please confine your debate to the bill before us and not personalities. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative Hewitt, you had it in your bill. And it's an incontrovertible fact. And that's what I love about our webpage is it tracks every little change, one of which you made. Thank you.
The member from Stearns, Representative Dameth.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. And members, as we have discussed this bill and the concerns that have been raised, we know that top of mind for Minnesotans is crime. And as we've heard, the stats that crime has spiked 22% in the year 2021. And in that same year, carjackings became frequent enough that our BCA decided to start tracking them for the very first time. So when the Attorney General approached the legislature to seek additional funding to help Greater Minnesota, our counties prosecute crime, this sounded like something that we could have had bipartisan support on. But like almost every piece of legislation that has been brought forward so far this session, the majority has failed to take into consideration our concerns and has rejected every one of our reasonable amendments tonight. So before writing a large check for a large sum of money, Republicans just wanted these things. We wanted some basic reporting structures that would put into place and provide some accountability for the funds. We wanted assurances that the money would go toward taking care of crime, violence, and fraud that Minnesotans care about. We thought those things would be really easy to agree upon. But instead, the majority rejected an amendment that would specifically allow these funds to go toward organized gang crime, organized drug crime, and organized retail crime. Tonight, the majority rejected an amendment that would specifically allow these funds to go towards combating fraud. Tonight, the majority very particularly deleted language out of our amendment that would have had this money go toward providing legal services to prosecute violent crimes and crimes that financially harm consumers and businesses. Our amendments tonight, members, prioritize the prosecuting of violent crimes instead of just relying on that vague language of related initiatives. So how are we to interpret these actions? If you don't want this money to go toward helping counties prosecute violent crimes, crimes that financially harm consumers and businesses, and combating fraud, then what else would this money possibly go for? Do my colleagues across the aisles want the language to remain vague enough that the Attorney General could use it for whatever he sees fit, like using his office to target Minnesotans for political reasons?
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
State your point of order.
Mason's 114, conduct of an executive or other official is not the subject for debate.
Whether a hypothetical or an actual, that is not permitted in Mason's. Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I am just, it's not really a question. So it is not a question.
It's a point of order, and I'm not ruling on the point of order. It's the custom and usage of the House just to comment to please observe the point of order as you continue your remarks. Representative Demuth, you have the floor.
Thank you, Speaker Hortman. There is no logical reason why the majority would reject these simple additions if they truly wanted the money to go toward making our communities safer. So Republicans take crime and the crime problem that we're facing very seriously. We want to take action to help Minnesotans feel safe in their communities, again. But just giving the Attorney General more money without the specifics and accountability of how this would be used to truly make Minnesotans safer isn't solving the problem. So with that, I am a no on this bill, and I wanted to be a yes. I was hoping for at least one amendment, but unfortunately, I am a no. Thank you, Speaker Hortman.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. County attorneys from across the state, as we've heard tonight, rely on assistance from the criminal division of the Attorney General's office in prosecuting criminal cases. And those county attorneys have been up here year after year after year asking us for help and asking that we get additional resources to the Attorney General's office. We know that 25 years ago, the division had 12 full-time prosecutors. 4 years ago, the office was down to 1. It has since expanded to 3 very hardworking but overstretched attorneys. And what we are asking today is to do what we can to get back to the level of that office in years past and to bring it up to 10 attorneys. That would mean an additional 70 to 85 criminal cases per year. That's it. That's what this bill does. We had some questions about, well, what requires that this bill be used to help county attorneys? Well, that's easy to answer. The Attorney General's office does not have original jurisdiction over criminal cases, meaning that they only help at the request of county attorneys. That's the only time when they can come out and get involved to help with criminal prosecutions. It's been pointed out that these cases are almost entirely in greater Minnesota. And that's because 24 county attorneys' offices in Minnesota have 2 or fewer county attorneys, and there are 14 counties with just 3 attorneys. If a county attorney in one of these offices has to go to trial on a murder, that can be 8 weeks. They would have to put all other aspects of their job on hold, everything that they provide for support for those counties to be able to help with those cases. And it may be the only murder they get in several years in that county. In Morrison County, the Attorney General's office helped convict a husband of murder for strangling his wife and dumping her body. The Freeborn County Attorney sought the Attorney General's office's assistance in an attempted murder case involving 3 victims, including a local policeman. And the county attorney said that it would be straining them beyond their breaking point without the help that the Attorney General's office has provided. Our colleagues across the aisle have expressed concern about crime. They've asked us, well, where are the public safety votes? Well, here you go. This is about as straightforward a public safety vote as you can hope for. The bill is literally 3 lines. It is an appropriation for criminal enforcement. That is not that hard to figure out. That is plain as day, black and white. Criminal enforcement. There have been requests for single subject bills. This is a single subject bill.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
State your point of order.
Mason Section 124, personalities not permitted in debate.
Representative Long, please continue your comments without using personalities. Representative Long.
This is as single subject a bill as you could ask for. It is a single appropriation for a single purpose, which is criminal enforcement. We have heard many excuses being presented on the floor. We've heard about the need for reporting. There is a 40-page narrative report, 200 pages of finance reports that are provided annually by the Attorney General. We have heard that there are other things that we want the Attorney General's office to be doing. Great, let's fund those other things. Let's get to those. That is not the subject of this bill. This bill is very straightforward. It is perhaps the most straightforward vote that we may be taking this year, a single appropriation for a single purpose. And we have heard that that purpose is one that everybody in this chamber agrees with. They have said that they agree that the Attorney General's office doesn't have enough money to support the county attorneys. That is a universal position, as we've heard it today. Nobody has debated the actual subject of the bill and said, no, we don't want county attorneys to get additional help in prosecuting crimes. We heard one member on the other side of the aisle say that this bill was not worthwhile. Well, I think it's a pretty clear question for members. Do you want 7 more prosecutors going after violent criminals, or is that not worthwhile? Do you want 80 more prosecutions per year, or is that not worthwhile? Do you want crimes like homicide, criminal sexual conduct, rape prosecuted in greater numbers, or is that not worthwhile? I hope that we see a green vote light up the board like we did on our earlier vote on public defenders tonight. There is absolutely no reason why we should not, and I urge members to vote green.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill. Will the chief clerk please call the name of the member who is voting remotely?
Clardy.
Go ahead, Mary.
Clarity votes yes.
Clardy votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 73 ayes and 55 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.